Um, oh, you know what? I have it open till 7:25, so they can jump in anyway. It's not like we have to exchange outlines or whatever. So let's go ahead and get started here. If you missed my speech earlier, I'm getting some really strange questions still for a group that has gone over their outlines more than once and gone over other students' outlines more than once. So this morning, I'm going to be going over the requirements, and you should have your outline uploaded so that I can see that you are indeed along the way, that you at least have a complete outline, even if it still needs some work. You've at least got a complete outline by now with parenthetical notation and a full bibliography. And we'll go and make sure that you have all the components necessary. As we're going through here, of course, you are welcome to stop me and ask questions. If it starts getting too deep into just your particular topic, rather than the requirements of the assignment, then I might cut you off and say, talk to me afterwards. But if it's something about, does this satisfy the requirements, or am I doing it right? Something like that. I'll listen to those questions and answer some of them. So we'll see what's going on. But the main thing today is to make sure that you have all of the components that are required, and that you understand the requirements of the components themselves. That you don't just have 2A, but you actually have numbers in 2A like that. So we may get into it. Okay. Anyway, you should have your document open, and it should be editable so that you can type notes in it. Sometimes when I'm doing this, especially when I'm not seeing faces and I'm not seeing people write, usually when I do this in a classroom, I watch everybody and I watch students writing their notes and things, and I slow down in between until I see people stop writing, or enough of them stop writing that I know they've got everything down. I can't see that now, so it is possible that I will start going too fast. If I start going too fast for you, please jump in and slow me down, okay? We got 3 hours scheduled here, or almost 3 hours scheduled for this class, so it's not like we're gonna run out of time. So don't let me get too far ahead of you, or you'll end up losing the value of this, okay? Any questions before we get started here? Get my grandpa glasses out. Yeah, we're 21. Okay. All right. Remember, every document or every assignment that you turn in has to be double spaced. I like 10 or 12 point font, but when we're doing stuff online here, I can blow the screen up and stuff back and forth, so that's not as big a requirement. But the double spacing is an important requirement. Not only is it easier for me to read when it's double spaced, that also gives me places or space to be able to put comments in, so that the comments are in context for what's on your outline. So make sure you have it double spaced, okay? We'll also be using, white space around the transition. So that's double rather than just double spaced. Okay. Do you have a content specific title? Do you have a title at all? If you don't have a title, make sure you put a title in, and the title needs to be content specific. What that means is it can't be generic. It can't be something like, my fourth speech or the persuasive or something like that. Make it content specific so that it makes sense. Make sure your name is included in it somewhere. That's not quite as important working online like this, because your document comes up in your name on your screen, okay? But you need to really get in the habit of double checking that stuff. We're going back to school. The winter classes, a significant number of them are back online. unless this, what is it, Omicron variant starts causing or wreaking havoc in the country. Probably by spring, a significant number of the classes will be back online, and by summer, we'll start rolling back all the way onto campus. So make sure that you always have your name on there. You know, whenever you make contact with your professor, make sure that he or she knows what class you're in and that kind of thing. Yes, we do remember most of you, at least remember your faces. But you know, they've got 5 classes, sometimes at multiple institutions, and so you know, tell them where you come from. All right. So your name and a title. General purpose. If you don't have the line general purpose, make sure you have a note there that you include the general purpose. And the general purpose of this speech is to persuade. It's just 2 words. If you have something other than to persuade written there, if you have additional stuff besides to persuade there, cross it out or make a note and change it over to persuade. The specific purpose. The specific purpose of Monroe's motivated sequence is to get the audience to do what you want them to do. And what you want them to do is the call to action at the end of the speech. So this becomes just a formula. If you don't have the line specific purpose, make a note for there. But the specific purpose should start off with the words to persuade my audience to, and then it should have your call to action there. Whatever you want the audience to do at the end of your speech, your call to action, that's what your specific purpose is for this assignment. So to persuade my audience to join the Surfrider Association, or to persuade my audience to enroll in Comparative Religions 101 next year, to persuade my audience to camp out this weekend by the administration building in protest, something, whatever. Whatever you want them to do, that's what it should be. And it should match. Whoa. I just got a big old echo into my out of my speakers. It should match with what your call to action is at the end of the speech. So make sure you go back and double check those. The call to action.
I'm sorry. It has to be the same as number 5.
Yes, the call to action is the one thing that the audience needs to do.
Okay.
And so what you want them to do is the specific purpose. Oftentimes, well, the call to action is 100% dependent on what you do in the solution satisfaction step. So anytime you change something up in the solution satisfaction step, you have to go back and double check again for your call to action. Your call to action may change when you have when you change your solution satisfaction step, and then you have to remember to go back and change your specific purpose as well. Oftentimes students forget to come back and double check that. So make sure that your specific purpose matches with your call to action. All right, remember there are 5 steps in Monroe's motivated sequence. There is no introduction, body, and conclusion. It is all body. They are all main points. They are all steps here. And the first step in Monroe's motivated sequence is the attention step. And for this particular assignment, for this outline, I've required that you fully text the attention step. That means write it out in paragraph form. That requires you to intentionally create the components to actually use an attention gaining device or more than one attention gaining devices there. It allows me to see whether you're doing things that you shouldn't do in there. So it's not a requirement of outlining that the attention step be fully texted. It's a requirement of this assignment so that I can test some concepts from you, okay? So it should be written out in paragraph form. It should be 7 to 10 sentences long. Now, this is actually a measure of time during the presentation The last one was 5 to 7 sentences long. This is a longer speech, so it is 7 to 10 sentences long, so it's still taking about the same amount of time. So since this is longer, sometimes you may have to use more than one attention gaining device because this is just the attention step. You can't start talking about the problem that you're going to be working with. All the attention step is for is to get the audience focused into the topic area that you want to work with. So you just want them thinking about fresh water or thinking about overweight kids. You don't want to start trying to prove that there are too many overweight kids who need to change their diets, okay? That's the rest of the speech. This is just a focus, a deductive focus concept here to get them thinking about an area. You can use any of the attention gaining devices from the textbook that are listed there, except startling statistics. Startling statistics are numbers, and you know, or you should be aware by now that those numbers belong down in 2A. They don't belong in the attention step. So no numbers up here. Numbers would be working with a specific problem that needs solved, right? Rather than just focusing them into a topic area. Also, there is no preview statement or any overview of the argument itself. If you've put a preview statement in here, you need to cross it out. The preview statement is your entire argument laid out with only logos. There's no ethos, there's no pathos in a preview statement. It is pure logos, and it is your entire argument. So at that point, the audience starts to counter argue against you in their head, and they decide right then whether they're going to listen to you anymore or not.
Professor,
can
you please give an example of a preview statement?
There is no preview statement in this one. A preview statement is a future-oriented statement that lists simple, blatant labels for each main point. So it would say something like, today I'm going to tell you how many hungry children there are in Southern California. Then I'll tell you what we need to do to feed those children. I'll tell you what the results of that is. And finally, I will ask each and every one of you to donate $5 to feed the Johnnies. That previews the entire speech, doesn't it? So we don't want that in Monroe's motivated sequence. We have to have all the ethos, pathos, and logos included in the argument before you ask them or give them an order to do something. So no preview statements and no overviews of Monroe. There should be nothing else in here. There is a possibility, if you think you need it, to put a personal credibility statement in here, but it's really not necessary because Monroe's motivated sequence follows the way the human mind works so well that we don't have to do some of the things that we did in the informative, like the preview statement, but it also requires us to do some extra stuff, ethos, pathos, logos, for one example, and the changes in the transitions. So that should finish the attention step. 7 to 10 sentences, fully texted, basically just an extended attention gaining device or devices. Now, as I said, these are all main points. So in between main points, we have full transitions. And since this is a connective, you understand that it is not part of the first main point, so the attention step, and it's not part of the second main point, the problem step. So you put white space above it and below it to show me that visual separation so that I know you understand that this is not part of my main points. When you're writing papers, your transitions, your connectives are part of your paragraphs. In public speaking, your connectives are a separate concept, certainly related to the main points, but they're not part of the main points. So you have the white space above and below it. Also, since they're main points, it needs to be a full transition. Full transition meaning you have to close the attention step before you open the problem step. You have to mention the central ideas or some concept with it. If I was doing the Johnny speech that I used part of the examples from before, I would be telling a story about Johnny not getting enough to eat and dropping out of school in high school. The transition would be something like, but Johnny is not alone. Let's talk about how many hungry children there are in Southern California. So that lets you know that I'm done talking about Johnny, and I'm now starting to talk about the problem that we're going to be working on. Use content-specific language here. If you have something written like, now that I have your attention, let's talk about the problem. That's not content-specific. That could go into anybody's speech. One of the concepts here that we're fighting with, that you are fighting with in this assignment, is that we are reinforcing the central ideas of the main points that are around it. And since this is an outline rather than a paper or a manuscript, your brain sees three concepts in a row that are being repeated. I was talking about Johnny. I'm done talking about Johnny. Let's talk about the number of kids that are hungry. There are X number of children hungry in Southern California. When you look at that on a paper when you look at that in an outline, that puts those concepts very close together, very concentrated. If you were writing a paper, or when you actually do the speech, those concepts are separated by 20 seconds or so, 15 seconds, so that they're not redundant or repetitive in the mind when you're hearing it. So remember, use content-specific language, even though your subconscious mind is going to fight you and tell you to stop that, because that's not how you write a paper. This is not a paper. This is an outline. Okay. So do you have a full transition? Is it set up by white space above it and below it? And have you used content-specific language on both sides of that transition? If you missed one of those concepts or more than one of those concepts, make sure you make a note for yourself to rewrite that transition so that it is a full transition and uses content-specific language and has white space above it and below it. I know that's a lot of stuff, and especially when I've talked to many of you about this is a very difficult assignment. It's very concentrated, so that the information that I'm giving you, it sounds like a lot, and it is. This is a 200-point assignment in basically a 700-point semester. So you can blow your entire semester if you mess up this speech really badly. Each one of these things that I'm listing to you are going to be worth a 5-point deduction. So there's more things here that totals more than 200 points. You have to make sure you have all of these components in here, and all of the concepts that are required are covered. Otherwise, you start losing points very, very rapidly in this assignment, okay? So do you have a transition? Is it set off above and below it by white space? Is it a full two-sided transition? And does it use content-specific language? If it doesn't satisfy one or more of those requirements, please make a note for yourself. That brings us to the second step of Monroe's motivated sequence, the problem/need step. Now here we're breaking off into outlining format again. That is one full content-specific topic sentence per notation, and at least 2 at any level of subordination. So we're going to start here with Roman numeral number 2 because it's the second step. It is the second main point. And there will be a sentence at Roman numeral number 2. not two sentences, not a comma splice, not a run-on, not a compound, a simple declarative sentence that clearly states the problem. There are too many hungry children in Southern California. Or you may want to add a cause there. There are too many hungry children in Southern California because we're not shipping enough. Or if you want to focus on crime, it would be crime is high in Southern California because children don't get enough to eat. That sentence alone tells you completely what the problem is that you're going to be working with. It doesn't set boundaries around it yet, but it says, I'm going to be talking about crime and hungry children in Southern California. So, do you have Roman numeral number 2? And do you have one full content-specific topic sentence there that clearly states what the problem is that you're going to be working with? There is substructure in this one, and there is a required amount of substructure. You will have 3 capital letters, A, B, and C. Not at least A, B, and C. You will have exactly A, B, and C here. You may have substructure, 1 and 2 under A and or B and or C. But at the level of capital letters, you'll have 3. If you have something other than that here, please make a note for yourself. And remember, these capital letters are once again outline notations. And that means one full content-specific topic sentence at that notation. So at the level of capital letters, you're going to have 3 sentences here. If you're writing paragraphs or writing short little multiple sentences and things, which I was still seeing lots of, change it. Figure out what the topic sentence is for that point. A is quantity, quantification. That means numbers. How many people are affected by this disease? How much money is being spent here? How many person hours of labor are being wasted? How many tons of trash are being dumped? How many tons of particulate matter are being pumped into the air? You've got to have a number here. If you don't have numbers here, you don't have a problem yet. Because unless the human mind can start drawing equations, start making cost-benefit analyses, it can't do anything. It's interesting, it will listen, but it's not going to be convinced to do anything. Remember, percentages and ratios are not numbers. They use numerals to express themselves, but they are math problems waiting to be solved. 4 out of 5 or 4/5 or 80% is not a number. It's a math problem. So if all you have is a percentage or a ratio, you need to go back into research and find the total number. If you say 80% of the women in LA County, you have to go and find another piece of research that tells you how many women total there are in LA County, and then apply that 80% to it so you can have the actual number. You can have the percentage ratio and the number, or you can have just the number, but you can't have just the percentage or the ratio. So do you have numbers here? Have you identified what the scope, the range of the problem is? Are they women in California? Are they women in the United States? Are they women in the county of Los Angeles? We have to be able to start setting up the boundaries for the population here. And I guarantee you, you have to have a source here. You can't just make this stuff up. This is a research-based assignment. You have to have a source for these numbers. Where did you find them? If you had to do the math, you have 2 sources here. That means 2 parenthetical notes at the end of the sentence. And remember, a parenthetical note is the first word from the bibliographic entry. Whatever you have in the bibliography, the first word, well, the first substantive word, right? We don't include the, and, it, stuff like that. The first substantive word is what goes in that parenthetical note. That allows a reader to go from your parenthetical note to your bibliography. And since your bibliography is alphabetical, they can quickly find that source. And if they want to do research on it, they can read that source from you. So this is one that I know you have to have a parenthetical note on. If you don't, make a little note for yourself. Where did I get this information? So that's quantity, 2A. 2B is quality or qualification. Remember, this is quality of life. This is where you outline the suffering, the illnesses, the injuries, the sicknesses, the syndromes. You list out what bad happens. You can't just say people are harmed. That doesn't mean anything to the human mind. You have to talk about broken bones, the contusions, lacerations, mental illnesses, depression. That's one of the reactive ones that comes up for me. So actually, this is where I've said, make me cry. You have to be specific enough that if I read it about my friend, I would be very sad. If you just said my friend is suffering, I would go, well, yeah, let me find out what's going on. There's nothing happening here yet. There's no reason for me to act here or to stay involved. So do you have actual suffering outlined here, with the caveat that death is not suffering? Death is a number. The number of people who die goes into A. How they suffered before they die, how their families suffer before or after, how society suffers before or after is suffering. Death itself is not suffering. It's technically the end of suffering, actually, unless your belief system has punishment after death. And so qualification. C is audience relevance. This is one of the ones that is most difficult for students to understand. Audience relevance. Why should the people in your audience listen to you? It needs to be audience specific. Your audience is college students in the greater Los Angeles area. That's who you are speaking to. That's who your audience is. So this relevance has to deal with them in some way. People who are Hispanics have larger number of people who suffer from this. The people who drive on freeways in LA spend more time on the freeway than most anywhere else, so they breathe this air longer. In the emergency rooms, there's so many people here that the emergency rooms become overcrowded. So when you get injured, you have to wait longer in the emergency room, which increases your suffering. It has to be specific to the people in this audience, and it has to be immediate. It has to be now. If you say something like, someday one of your relatives might get this disease, that's not immediate. And immediate, and the, don't use the word immediate, the human mind at that point responds with, I'll deal with it when it happens. I don't have to deal with it now. It's not happening now. It's someday, somewhere down the road. So rather than listening to the rest of your presentation right now, I'm going to stop listening because that takes work and I don't have to do anything about it now. That's someday, somewhere down the road. So you are driving on the freeways where this air is so thick. You are of the age group where this starts to take root. More people suffer from this in this age group than others. College students are the ones who have to pay this price. So do you have relevance? Is it audience specific? And is it immediate? If it doesn't satisfy one or more of those requirements, please make a note for yourself. That will bring us to the end of the problem/need step. And that means we have another full transition. So do you have a transition? Is it a full transition? Is it set up by white space above it and below it? And does it use content-specific language? If it doesn't satisfy one or more of these requirements, please make a note for yourself, okay? All right, the solution satisfaction step. The sentence at 3 is a compound sentence. We don't have too many compound sentences in a full sentence outline, but the nature of this assignment forces you into this. Because this is a research-based assignment, and you're working with big social problems, you have to limit yourself to be able to do it in 6 minutes here, okay? And to follow a line of reasoning. So this sentence at 2 has 2 parts. The first part clearly links to the problem step. So if the problem is children are not getting enough to eat, the start on the sentence at 2 should be, or at 3 should be something like, we must feed the children. So if there are hungry children in 2, we need to feed the children. If we have too much smog in the air, we need to reduce smog. If we're running out of fresh water, we need to either create or conserve water. If we have too much trash, we need to recycle the trash, or we need to reduce the trash. So the first part should be very clearly linked to the problem in 2. And then the second part of that is the mechanism by which you have chosen to advocate we solve this, or not solve, but mitigate this, we reduce it. You're assigned with this assignment to choose only one mechanism, okay? In the real world, you would have to attack these big problems from multiple places, right? But if you do that, you have to explain every one of those different directions, and it makes the entire assignment even more complex than we're already at. So the assignment requires you to choose one mechanism. There's too much smog, so we need to reduce smog by reducing the number of cars on the road. We need to reduce smog. I have chosen to do that by reducing the number of cars. There are other ways to reduce smog, and you could choose another way. We need to reduce smog by changing the formulation of our fuels, or we need to reduce smog by increasing the number of electric vehicles on the road. So all of those things would be in the real world, but here you're going to choose just one of those. So do you have a compound sentence at 2? Does the first part of it link clearly to the problem, or in 3, just the sentence there link clearly to the problem in 2? And have you identified the one mechanism that you're going to be utilizing? This is not a list of things that can be done. You are the policymaker. So what are you going to advocate that we do? If you haven't done those 2 things there, make a note for yourself to do it. There will be substructure here, okay? I guarantee it. It will be the most complex part of your outline. If you have, only 1 or 2, if you have 2 or maybe just 3 concepts here at the level of capital letters, you're probably not done. Okay, it's the most complex part. You already have A, B, and C in 2, right? So this is going to be more complex than just A, B, and C. It's going to have, A, B, C, D, E, maybe F, or it's going to have A with 1s and 2s, B's, 1s and 2s. It's going to be more complex than anything else in the outline. You have to have 1 capital letter for every component in your mechanism. For everything that needs to be done or provided in your mechanism, you have to have a capital letter for it. So if you're requiring a law to be written, A would be, what is your law? What is your law going to say? You can't just say we need to pass a law. You're the policymaker. What is your law going to say? And I'm not mean. I don't want you to get down into legalese here, but we are going to require that everybody recycle at least 80% of their recyclable materials. Okay, that's the law that's going to be written. Who's responsible for getting that law passed? Is it a state law? Then you're talking about the state legislature. Is it a county requirement or county law? Then you're talking about I forget what the name of the group is that runs the county. Let's go ahead. If it's a national law, then you're talking about the Congress. They're the ones that are going to be passing this law. How are they influenced? Are you going to work with direct lobby, having people call? Are you going to work with professional lobby? So joining an organization that hires lobbyists? Are you going to ask them to contact the boss of whoever that group is? So how are you going to influence them, or how are they influenced? Are you going to need any money for this? Is your law going to require that we spend money? Most things when you write a law require money. Where are you going to get that money? Make sure you know approximately how much is going to. Once again, I'm not going to be looking for a general accounting list here, but a good idea on what is going to be needed and where it's going to come from. Enforcement. What if a state decides not to do what your federal law says needs to be done? How are you going to make them do it? Are you going to punish them in some way? Or are you going to provide rewards for states that do it? What are you going to do for enforcement? That kind of thing. So for a law, a simple thing like we need people to stand when the flag is raised or whatever, you're going to have at least 3 with substructure, maybe up to 5 capital letters here. And that's not 5 things that needs to be done. That's 5 things that make the solution work, how it operates in the real world. Now, hopefully you've chosen a solution from research, that you found an expert out there that says these are the things that need to be taken care of, because trying to make it all up on your own is not only difficult, quite frankly, you're not very good at this yet. You're still learning how to create plans, how to write programs and things. That's not going to be fully it's not going to be well covered for you until you get through your 4th or 5th year of college. Your 3rd and 4th years, you're going to be analyzing studies, analyzing programs, analyzing projects. And then in your 4th, 5th year, you're going to be creating your own studies. You're going to be doing your own projects. Okay, so until you get to that point, you really haven't learned how to do this yet. So it's hard. So hopefully you've chosen an expert and are advocating that we do what they said. Okay. So whether it be ABC with 1s and 2s underneath it, or A, B, C, D, E, A, B, C, D, E, F, whatever, the solution, just like most everything else, can be as complex as you need it to be here. Your audience does not have to remember all of the points in the solution here. All they have to come away from is with the impression that they believe you have a workable plan. They don't need to remember how much money it's going to cost. They just have to remember that you are going to provide the money for it in some way. They don't have to remember exactly what the law says. They just have to remember you have a law that will make it work. So this can be amazingly complex because they don't need to remember it. They just have to come away with the impression based on having a good logos here, having the organization laid out completely that they understand, okay? So whether it be A, B, C, D, E, F, G, whatever, when you get to the bottom of that, white space, another full content-specific transition, white space, to 4, the visualization step. And remember, all through 3, those were all outline notations. That means 1 full content-specific topic sentence per notation. Oh my goodness. I thought I had that turned off. I am very sorry. I'm gonna have to get back to that pretty quickly. All right, where was I? Oh, visualization. Let me finish this up because I need to return that. So it's my wife, and she had a significant problem over the holiday weekend with vertigo. Gotta get focused here again, sorry. So do you have a full content specific transition in between, and has it been set up above and below with white space? Visualization. You will have 2 capital letters in visualization, A and B. There is not at least A and B, it is completely A and B. And you may have 1 and 2 underneath it, but everything in the cosmos fits into either A or B. A is mitigation. A is where you show projected or estimated results on anything that you've already listed in the speech. And B is additional benefits, which is effects that you have not already talked about in the speech somewhere. So in A, you have to show a reduction of the problem in some way. You have to show that the suffering is reduced, or you have to show that the numbers go down. And you have to have some sort of comparable data here. You can't just say the problem will get better. You have to tell me how much better it's going to be. This is one of the main components for that cost benefit analysis PM. You talk about the problem, that is the problem here, and the cost is what you're going to ask them to do at the end, also sum in 3. And so the benefit is how much that problem is going to be reduced. Once again, these are estimated or projected results. And you got to get those numbers from somewhere once again. So either cite a source or explain how you came up with those numbers. B, the additional benefits are other cool things. Something, could be anything. In my Johnny thing, A is reducing crime and feeding children, because that's what I talked about in the rest of the speech. B is saving money a couple of different ways and reducing suffering. When crime goes down, the number of people in the judicial system goes down, we save money. When you feed kids, they don't get sick as often and they get better faster, so we save money in the medical field. Because they get better faster, we're also saving suffering for those children. You have to give me at least 1 additional benefit for this assignment. That brings us to the next transition here. So in between the visualization step and the call to action, do you have a transition? Is it a full transition? Does it have white space above it, below it? Everything we talked about all the way through. And then call to action. The call to action here is usually a directive clause. You've done all the preparation before this. Now you tell the audience what you want them to do. Join the Surfrider Association. Donate $5 to feed the Johnnies. Call your congressperson, tell them to vote for AB 1725. So do you have a call to action here? If you haven't called them to action, if you don't have a good hard active verb here, concrete active verb here, then you don't have a call to action yet. You're asking them to think about stuff. I'm sorry, I am very concerned about Victoria. I'm going to take a quick break and call her back because she knows I'm lecturing this morning, so I'm afraid something's wrong. Okay, hold on, I'm too distracted. Sorry about that. She's headed back to the ER. Okay. Let me get focused back here with you again. We're almost done here, so I'm going to go ahead and finish with you all. She won't be checked in for a while anyway. Okay. Anyway, we're at the call to action here. The one thing that the audience needs to do to either cause the enacting of the solution or to facilitate that. With this kind of assignment, most of you are forced into a smaller action which causes a larger action. The example that I used with the Surf Rider Association earlier. if the beaches are full of trash and you ask 20 people to pick up trash, that's not going to clean up the beaches, is it? So you ask those 20 people to join the Surfrider Association, because the Surfrider Association is large enough that if they continue to get the support necessary, they can get the beaches cleared up. So we have to talk about the Surfrider Association up in 3, so that saying call the Surfrider Association in 5 makes sense. It has to be related to something you've already covered in 3. It has to be part of it. And there are some restrictions here. These are not subpoints. The vast majority of you are going to have a simple directive clause here. It's not even going to be a full sentence. Join the Surfrider Association is not a sentence. It's a directive clause. You should join the Surfrider Association is a full sentence, but you're not telling them what they should do. You're not asking them to think about it. You're telling them what to do here. It's not a call to consideration. It's not something you want them to think about. You're telling them what to do at this point. So the restrictions or guidelines are in the form that I published for you, but is it something that they're capable of doing? If you want to end war, that's a really cool thing, but nobody in this audience can end war. If you want to feed all the children, that's really cool, but nobody in this audience can feed all the children. They have to work through something else to get to it. So is it something they can do? Is it something that they'd be willing to do? Is it something that is or would be morally reprehensible to them or beyond their accepted lifestyle? Would they be willing? Would you be willing? If you believed in the concept, not this somebody came up and talked to you on the street and said, hey, do this. But if you listened to the entire speech, if you believed everything in it and internalized it, would you be willing to do it? Simple. Remember, it's called the one thing the audience needs to do. That means for most of you, there's going to be one verb here. If you have to have steps, then you might have 2 verbs, but remember they have to be steps. That means you have to accomplish one before you can accomplish the second. Contact your congressperson, tell them to vote for AB 1725. Contact, tell, that's 2 verbs, but you have to contact them before you can tell them, right? So those are steps. Rather than call your congressperson, call your senator. Those are 2 different actions, okay? Concrete, a good hard action verb. If you're dealing with a more esoteric or a mental state of being or a mental process, you have to get to that through action of some sort. You can't just tell them be less prejudiced or be more accepting. You have to teach them something, get them to read a pamphlet that will educate them, get them to attend a lecture, to join or add a class that helps them understand things that will reduce their prejudice. Well, the prejudice and bias is part of it there, but to reduce the potential for discrimination. That would be the correct way to talk about that. And remember, it should be positive, something for the audience to do, as opposed to something to stop doing, not do, or cease. Okay, what do you want the audience to do here? Join the Surfrider Association. Donate $5 to feed the Johnnies. Call your congressperson, tell them to vote for AB 1725. Those are calls to action. And if you have lots of stuff written here, you either didn't finish 3, because remember, you need one capital letter for every component. You either didn't finish it here, or you don't trust what you've done here, so you're trying to add stuff at the end to make it work. You need to do it in 3. Don't try to add it on at the end here. This is just the call to action. We're excited. 6 sources, 6 different sources. I got an outline already that had like 3 different sources with the same root URL. Different pages in the same website are the same source. It's like different pages in the same book. It's the same source. So you need 6 unique sources. I forget if I limited you to 3 or 4 of any one source type. That'll be in the assignment there, but make sure you know that there. Also, you have to have parenthetical notation throughout the outline here. You have a minimum number to put in it, but make sure that you're putting in a parenthetical note. I just used my cursor here on my screen to illustrate parenthetical note. Make sure you put a parenthetical note after every sentence where you're using a source for the information rather than your own reasoning, okay? Any questions about what we just went over?
Good morning, Professor.
Yeah.
I just I guess I'm repeating what you just said, but just for clarification, the very last part of the outline, number 5, is just one sentence. It's not going to be like a conclusion in a way or anything
Right.
like that.
Remember,
Okay.
remove the concepts of introduction, body, conclusion when you're talking about Monroe. Monroe has 5 steps. There is no introduction, body, conclusion. So make sure you remove those words so they don't sneak in on you when you're writing something down, okay?
Would that
but yeah,
would that also be a compound sentence or just a straightforward
for
call of action?
For most of you, it's not even going to be a full sentence. It's going to be a directive clause.
Okay.
Join
Right.
the Surfrider Association is not a full sentence, is it?
Right.
It's an order.
All right. Alrighty.
Yeah, it'll be, the call to action is very simple. Anything else?
Yes, I have a question. On number 4, can we use numbers again, like percentage?
Yeah, well, if you've just using a percentage there, I would recommend that you go ahead and do the math. You know how many are in the problem step, right?
Yes.
So rather than just trying to put the percentage in there, just apply the percentage to that number, and then you have a real number there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you got all the time in the world to do the math when you're writing your speech. When the audience is sitting there thinking, they have to try to do math in their head then, and that doesn't work.
Okay.
Anything else?
Good morning, Professor Gooden. I wanted to ask for number 3. You gave the example of a law. In this case, would it be, as you mentioned, would it be how the law is enforced and enacted, or would we considerably be using an example of how the law is going to help solve the problem? Excuse me.
How it's going to help or how it's going to solve is results, right? That's 4. 3 is how it's going to operate. Who's going to do it? What's it going to say? Do we need to get any money for it? That kind of stuff.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Also, I'm sorry if I might ask for the full. Well, thank you for the full transitions statements. Is it possible to make it a 1 sentence type of thing? I'm sorry, instead of it being a 2-parter, where it's like where you connect the 2, can you? Sorry, let me just go ahead and give you an example, please.
Okay.
It's not making sense.
My head was turning sideways already.
Okay, let's see. So, for example, if the solution were to be funds, for example, between 3, and for number 4, it's the visualization step. Instead of doing it where you mentioned because of because of 3, then here's 4. Could you be like allocating funds in this fashion will lead to the outcome of a better world in different ways?
Well, the outcome for a better world would be too vague as far as I'm concerned, but since you are indeed providing funding necessary, you can use the term funds at the beginning. That's content specific. But the second part is still too generic. If we provide these funds, 70 million people will be able to breathe free, whatever.
Okay, thank you.
And remember what's happening here. I warned everybody about what's happening is your brain doesn't want to say that there, because the very next sentence says that again, doesn't it?
Yes.
So you have to force yourself here because it's an outline, not a paper.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. As much problem as that causes for students, I always giggle a little bit because the creative ways their brain tries to get around repeating that like that. It's kind of neat to watch that concept. Anything else? Okay, what's happening the rest of the semester here? We only have 2 more class meetings here, and I have pushed you well beyond where we should be at this point because it's just taken us longer to get here. So I've made a decision that most of you probably won't care about or you'll be happy about. And that is that I'm not going to require you to take an objective final in this class. Next week, you have the opportunity that if you have missed an assignment, if you missed one of the speeches, you can turn it in for half credit next week. And so if you're doing that, make sure that I get it here. I'll put up an assignment for makeups in there for you. But the rest of you should be continuing to work on this. This speech is much more important to me than an objective final. Testing, especially objective type testing, that's multiple choice, fill in the blanks kind of stuff. It's the worst way to measure learning. So, when I get into something like this where we're, for whatever reason, running out of time, tests are usually the first thing that I dump. Okay. So hopefully you've been studying along because you're going to use this information the rest of your college career at least, and out in the world as well. You're going to be giving speeches and presentations the rest of your life, basically. Well, maybe until you retire and go to live in a cave or whatever you're going to do. But so it's important that you've gone through this stuff, but it's more important to me that you do this 200-point assignment well than it is that you take an objective final and get 65 or 70 on that thing. That's just a waste of time as far as I'm concerned where we're here. Okay. So next week will be people doing makeups. Next week was also set for when I was going to tell you all what's going to be on the final, but since I'm not going to actually require that, then I'm not going to tell you what to take or what to study on the final because you're not going to take it. And then the week after that, you have to get this outline turned into me for grade, and I will grade them from that point. Okay. I guess I should probably.
Is that gonna come along with the video?
With the what?
With the video?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, the final grade, the one for grade, has to have the video attached to it, or not attached to it, but the link included in it. I can't grade it if I don't see it, right? Probably what I will do for your transcripts is I'll probably average in, whatever your average is by the time I finish grading the persuasive. I'll enter that number. The final is worth 100 points, so whatever the percentage is, I'll enter that into your final. Because if you go to a private institution, if you go to one of the state institutions, they just take the transfer. But sometimes in private institutions, especially if you go to one of the liberal arts institutions, you sometimes have to prove that you did what was necessary for this to transfer. And one of the things they will look for is for a grade on your final. So I'll put that in there. It won't hurt you. It won't give you extra points. It won't take any points away from you because it'll be the same percentage of what everything else you had taken care of there. But that protects you if you go to like I said, especially to an independent liberal arts college, because they do it all the time. I have to write letters for them and send syllabi and all kinds of stuff.
Professor.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just had this question come up.
Well,
Do we have to have a limit on the amount of sources that we use?
no, it's a minimum number of sources on the requirement.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if you remember, but I told you when I did this assignment, well, of course, back then we also had longer semesters. We had 17 and 18-week semesters at that point. But when I started doing this assignment and when I started requiring this assignment as a teacher, I had 12 sources in the bibliography and 10 of them parenthetically noted in the outline for this same speech. Okay. So yeah, you can certainly use more. It's always a minimum number, unless in a specialized one where I say exactly, like on the very first speech here. So yeah, you can certainly have more sources, and you can parenthetically note more than 4 as well.
Okay, thank you so much. It's because I got worried because I had 8 citations.
That's much better. Actually, those are the kinds of things that push you up from the average, that takes you into above average or into exceptional when I'm grading. Anything else?
I have a question. It would refer to the final week though. Since like most classes, they like have their own little like separate like calendar or like time we have to show up for the finals. How would that work for us? Do we just show up at the same time as right now, or as the thing says for the final?
Wow. I didn't think about that. Well, since you're not going to actually be showing up here, I'll make sure that the due time is, gives you enough freedom. I'll make the due time like 3 in the afternoon or something like that, so you have all day to make sure you can get it loaded up. Or you get it loaded up the day before, and then you don't have to worry about it at all.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. I don't think I've changed any final time. Maybe I just got lucky in the last 2 years. I don't think I've ever changed a final time.
So if we have no late assignments to turn in, we just work on the outline, right? That's it.
You bet. Have a beer.
Okay.
Okay. Maybe not a beer at 7 in the morning. Unless you're still up. Then I guess it's okay. None of you would do that though, right?
No.
All
Something
night
else.
party.
Can we send
all
you
night
the outline
drinking and-
like back and forth, like to you, so you
Yeah.
can be it? Yeah. Okay.
Sure. I'll always look at them. Anything else?
I have one quick question again. So if you have more than one source in a sentence, how would you parenthetically note that?
2 parenthetical notes.
So would you put like the because I have like the parentheses and then the person's name, and then I have a comma, and then for the second source the other person's name.
But put another set of parentheses.
Okay, thank you.
Comma makes me think they're on the same source. That you're listing more than one author from the same source. So put 2 sets of parentheses with one word in it.
Okay, thank you. I'm fixing it.
You bet. Anything else?
When you're talking about makeups, what does that pertain to exactly? Like, for example,
If
like
you
for
missed
example,
if you missed turning in one of the speeches,
oh, okay, all right,
there are some people that missed one of the early speeches, or there's a couple that actually missed the informative, which you could destroy your grade with that one as well if you don't get that turned in.
okay.
So yeah,
I ask because I straight up just like overslept today, so I didn't even like get to turn in the final working draft. So I was like, oh well.
just what we did was we went over it line by line. What I asked you all to do, I did it here because I was still getting some really weird questions. So go over it line by line, or sit down with somebody who loves you enough to go over it line by line.
Okay.
And if they don't love you enough, offer them dinner. Just get another mind, another brain involved in it.
Can I give you dinner for a better grade?
My price has gotten cheaper and cheaper. I always used to tell students that, I certainly, it's America, I will sell myself. I'm not crazy, but I used to do the math. I go, because if I get caught selling a grade, I'm going to get fired. So then I would take the amount of money I'm making every year and multiply that by the number of years. And that was what my bribe number was. And of course, back then it was, several $100,000. Now it's getting down to, 200,000 or 150,000, something like that. I'm almost affordable because I'm so close to retirement. Anything else? Dinner. It's not nearly enough of a bribe.
I don't know. It's a pretty good steak.
It better be a Morton's dry hung steak. If you've never had a Morton's dry hung steak, trust me, you can eat that with a fork. They are wonderful.
I had an A5 Wagyu.
They're also amazingly expensive. Morton's, Chris's, Ambrosia. Anything else? Once again, just as a reminder, normally when I do this, I make everybody in the classroom hold their hand up if they have work to do. I'm not going to make you do that, but trust me, the vast majority of students still have work to do. You've gone over these 3 times and you still have work to do on them, right? Understand, in college, you have to get used to doing rewrites. You have to finish your assignment. You start on it as soon as you get it, so you can finish it early enough to either rewrite it yourself or to give it to your professor so they give you comments, or to have a friend read it and give you comments so you can rewrite it. Almost nobody gets it right the first time. If you were getting it right the first time, you wouldn't need college, right? Anything else? You just got a pop-up right in the middle of my face, keeps distracting me. I don't know what it's about. Audio settings, okay. Oh, it's probably because my phone went off.